This is for the lesson, Hold Your Water. One of the first things you'll need to do is make sure that you have some string that's cut to approximately 60 centimeters in length. Most of your sections will not be near 60 centimeters long, but this gives you plenty of string to work with. That's the distance of 2 lengths of your ruler that we have to use in class. Once you have that, set your ruler aside. You'll need it again. Then we need to look at the maps. This first watershed map, watershed A, has section A and section B, and it's divided by a dotted line. We will not measure the dotted line or the outer boundary of the watershed. The only thing we will be measuring are the tributaries, rivers, and streams that are within those sections of each watershed. Now let's look at map B. Now you'll notice watershed B is divided into several more sections, C, D, E, F, and G. Each section will be measured separately and entered into the data table on the assignment page. Now section C is really small, so we're going to go ahead and do it together. Now notice whenever we measure this, we start at the dotted line and we measure around that tributary and we come all the way down and hit the dotted line again. Do not measure past the dotted line. Once you do this, you would place a mark on your string. Now we'll get more into that in just a minute. What I will do with this now is measure it. That way section C is done for everyone. And section C is 4 centimeters. So we will write 4 centimeters in the data table for section C. Now, let's look at what we should do after we measure that. Each time we measure a part of the tributary, we want to highlight it. Now notice I did not highlight past the dotted line. I just highlighted the part that I measured. Now let's begin measuring part D. I will not measure the whole thing, but this will tell us how we need to go through the process of measuring. So we're going to start at the end of this tributary that we measured part of already, and we'll follow that line until it reaches the dashed or dotted line again. And again, when I get to that part, I'm going to place a dot there. Okay? There's a dot on the string. Now we'll start at that dot when we measure the next line. But before we do that, we want to make sure that we've highlighted the part that we've already measured. We don't want to go back and re-measure something that we've already measured. That's important that we highlight it. Each time we've made a dot, we immediately highlight the part that we measured. Now, let's go back to the string. We do not start back at the very end of the string. We start back at the last dot that we made when we measure the next section. So I'll place the dot at the end and I measure to the end of that tributary, make another dot. Now sometimes these markers begin to dry out, so it's good to keep them closed. And again, highlight that section that has already been measured. So now we can see exactly what we've measured. Each person will need to take a different section. Some people will be measuring more than one section. And it's a good idea to go back and have another person measure it a second time to see how close you got the first time. This will take a lot of time, so we really have to work quickly but efficiently when we do this. Let's make one more measurement, and then we'll talk about how we're going to figure out what the total distance is along the tributaries in this area. So we're going to measure along this big one right down the middle. And I know some of these are kind of difficult to follow through, so just lay your string out along that line as you go. Make the twists and the turns. Okay. Now we'll make a dot there. Okay, now I'm not going to measure the whole section D, but again, as a reminder, the part that I've measured has now been highlighted. I still need this little piece here and all of these other ones that aren't highlighted. I still need to measure those. But so far, this little section, and this section here have been measured. So how did I determine the length of that? That's when we bring the ruler back in. And I start measuring from the last dot that I made on the string, and I measure out to the end. So far I've measured 12.5 centimeters in section D, but that's not the answer for section D, because we still have all those other lines. And also, again, remember, we do not measure this outer boundary. That is just the outer boundary. So that should not be measured and should not be highlighted. And that's how you measured your distances on your watershed.